Hi, and welcome to the Why People Buy podcast. It's a podcast about the motivations and buyer psychology of growth in the food and beverage industry. I'm your host, Seth Waite, and I am a partner at Schaefer, a buyer psychology firm. And today we're talking with Ashley. And before we get into introductions and go any further, I'm going to ask you just a couple kind of lightning round questions about food and beverage.
Let's
And
do
the
it.
very first question that I want to ask is, what is the beverage that you were like in love with right now? What are you drinking?
Okay, so this is a horrible question to start on. I'm sorry, Seth. So I am actually not a beverage girly. So I am like water through and through. If I had to pick a beverage and someone was like, are you gonna what are you gonna drink? And it's gotta be something fun, I would say Spindrift. So I love Spindrift. It's one of the only beverages on the market that has no natural flavors and it's just real fruit juice. So yeah.
Cool. And I'm going to ask a follow-up question then on the water. Are you like tap water, filtered water? Do you buy water? And if so, do you have a favorite brand?
This is a good one too. I do buy water, so I have a refillable jug and I refill it at Whole Foods. So, and this is a newer thing. Grew up in New York. New York has a great tap water system, great aqueducts, and now I live in San Francisco and we also have really good tap water. So I do drink tap water, but I feel like I have gotten a little bit bougier over the years. I also have a 3-year-old toddler, so now we buy our water from Whole Foods. So
There you go. That
yeah,
works great. And
yeah.
then last question, if you're looking for something like a salty snack, what do you grab?
Yes. So, good friends of mine, obviously, I'm in the industry. I have a lot of founder friends. One of my favorite snacks is Daily Crunch's dill pickle nuts. So, I'm obsessed. I'm also great friends with the founder of Sunny Snacks. So, I love their cheddar crackers. I love Ella's Flats. Because we make bars and chocolates, we lean on the sweeter side. So, I always eat something B.T.R Nation every day without fail, probably multiple times a day. But I'm also a salty snack lover, and those are my 3 go-tos.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Let's dig in and get to know you better
Yeah.
outside of just some of your favorite foods and beverages and things like that.
That sums me up.
Yeah, exactly. But if a friend was introducing you to someone else, what would they say about you?
This is a good one. So, if my best friend was introducing me to someone else, I think the most important things that they would say is I, besides what I do and the fact that I'm a mom, so being a mom, obviously, and my daughter is the most important thing in the world to me, but my business is also my baby. So, besides that, um, the number one thing they would say is that Ashley is probably the most hardworking person on the planet. So I try to sleep, but I am of the mindset of that we are here to fulfill our purpose. I feel like it's not rocket science, but B.T.R Nation is filling a need and a gap for people in the world that are looking for the cleanest low sugar snacks, and we're doing it. And I feel like every day I wake up energized with this purpose. So I feel like my best friend would say Ashley wakes up with a fire in her belly,
Yeah.
super passionate, constantly working, never a moment to herself, but she does it with as much kindness and empathy as possible.
Awesome. That's great. And let's kind of dig in then on the BTR Nation side of things. What's the origin story? Like how did this come to be?
Yeah, so B.T.R Nation started unlikely time, unlikely place. Both of my parents were diagnosed with very rare forms of cancer, and I was their primary caretaker. And this was when I was in so I was 24 years old. I was actually working in education at this time. I had an interesting career path as well, getting to B.T.R. And my mom was diagnosed with something called a leiomyosarcoma. It was super aggressive. She passed away in 9 months. And then my dad, a couple months after, he was experiencing some like stomach symptoms. And when my mom was sick, but we just thought it was stress and anxiety and all of the things of being a caretaker. And a couple months later, he was diagnosed with something called appendiceal cancer, super rare, both of them. And my dad had a little bit of a longer journey. So he went through radiation, he went through chemo. So he was able to kind of see this aha moment where I literally was standing in front of a hospital vending machine and just so stumped at why, especially hospitals of all places, taking care of sick individuals that are trying to get better, and also doctors, nurses who are working sometimes 48-hour shifts. Why is it full of junk? And this was in cafeterias, like hospital bodega, gift shops, every vending machines everywhere. And I was like, this just doesn't make any sense. At this time, I was like fascinated with food and I was going on my own weight loss journey. And I was actually back to school, like getting my master's in food studies and like supply chain. So I really started to like dig in and figure out what was going on here. But my bachelor's degree is in biochemistry. So I was always fascinated with like how food works, the organic elements essentially of food and how food's made up. And it was just always was more like a side hobby because my full-time job was in education. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. And I started tinkering around in the kitchen. I always loved cooking and baking, but it wasn't anything like where I was a chef or anything like that. But I started to make these little nut butter bites. They were not bars at the time, but they were like half the size of a bar. And I was like, these are really good. And my now husband was like, why don't you, instead of eating your Quest bars, right, or Cliff bars, because that's what I was eating at the hospital. It was Quest and Kind actually every day, day in and day out. And I knew I wasn't feeling well because I got that like 3 p.m. slump because it's so
Yes.
much sugar alcohols. It was tough. And I was super, super bloated every time I ate these bars. So I was like, let me bring these to the hospital and I'll use these, but I don't have a lot of time to like make them. So I'll just, make a whole batch and see what people think and,
Yeah.
see if it's good for me. And that was through my father's cancer journey. I would bring them in for him. And at the very end, it was very hard for him to even eat. But in the early days when he was going through treatment, he was like, these are really good. I think you
Yeah.
should sell them. My dad was an entrepreneur at heart, and he had a regular 9 to 5 job, but he was the most hardworking man I know. And he took that 9 to 5 and like made it like I'm going to work 24/7. I'm going to be the best in my in my office, and he did that. But one of his bucket list items was to open a bagel shop in New York. Born and raised New Yorker, and he was an entrepreneur, and he wanted to do this and he never got the chance to. So, but he worked in trademarks and patents. And before he passed away, he incorporated a company for me and he thought it would be like a little catering company or something. But he
Yeah.
was like, buy some packaging, like, here's like $1,000. Like, let's see what we can do with this. And he tabled the idea when he passed away, but I was still making these bites in my kitchen. I had the recipes in a Google Doc on my computer. Like it was pretty
Yeah.
chill.
Yeah.
And then I had this like the bug of like the startup bug. So I decided I was going to go work at a startup. And I did. I worked at a supplement company for 3.5 years, grew that company from 0 to 10 million in that time, online only. My background is e-commerce, taught myself everything about e-commerce from email to influencer marketing to every part of the customer journey from acquisition to retention. And I just loved it. And I still love it. E-commerce is my favorite. It's just my favorite thing because
Yeah.
you really get to get close to the customer.
Yeah.
And I loved it so
So
much.
much
And
data.
then the pandemic hit and this was March 2020. And as much as I, loved being at this company, I was starting to get a little restless. I was like, life is precious. Maybe I should do something with this. I know how to run a company, right? I knew how we were a team of 3, so I knew how to grow and scale a company. I had no idea how difficult, just
The
funding a
rest of
company
it.
and the capital aspect of it. But I was like, I have some savings for like a down payment for a house one day. Why not put this into a company? And I did. So in very end of 2020, we like put our first deposit down for, took our recipes to a co-packer and was like, this is what we want to make. We don't want to make any sacrifices. Tweaked it a little bit, but nothing crazy. Emulsifiers, no vegetable glycerin, like really kept the core essence of the product. And we launched at the very end of 2020 and then like sold out a very small batch. In February of 2021, we came back and we had some more SKUs. And ever since then, we've been growing like crazy. And B.T.R stands for Be Bold, Tenacious, and Resilient. And it's my parents' personal mantra. And I put that into the company. And it also stands play on the word better as well too. So we're making this better nation so people can feel good and enjoy what they're eating. Yeah, and that's the origin story. So it's very special
Oh,
to me. The company is a very, very huge part of my life.
yeah. Very personal
Yes.
connection point. It wasn't just like, hey, I was standing in the grocery store and I had this idea. And there's nothing wrong with that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
talk about mission, right? Like just this very driven connection between the very values that you have that you're bringing there that came from your parents. That's
Yes.
really special.
Thank you.
And how, and just congrats, because
Thank you.
it's hard to come out of an experience like that.
Yeah,
And grief really weighs on each of
it
us, I think.
does.
And there's that feeling always of like, I don't know if I want to be productive or if I can be productive in that way. And so to turn that into something really special is beautiful honor
Thank
to,
you. Thank you. I highly recommend. I just started going to therapy. I'm a big advocate for it. I think it's a great idea, especially for anyone. My therapy is a little bit more like business coaching as well too.
yes,
So it's good. Froze there. Sorry about that, Seth.
no way.
So I highly recommend that because especially as you're growing and scaling and managing teams, it's really good to be able to get my grief under control, make sure it's in a really good place, make sure everyone has the vision and mission. Because I think because we're such a mission-driven company, it's so critical that the messaging is right in every single channel, every single thing we do, and we're also moving really fast, which is hard to do. So I'm really happy to be here because there's so much buyer psychology that goes into how we message and how we market to our customers, and it's very different than most food companies, and it's very different than most online companies that kind of, set up a Shopify site, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, some of these companies are doing millions and tens of millions of dollars, and it's like, I'm just going to pump out as much creative from, UGC creative as possible and get as much rolling, that flywheel on Meta and TikTok, and who cares who's sharing what as long as it's bringing in money. We are very different than that. Our messaging is really curated.
Yeah. And how do you, I mean, I love to hear that, obviously. That intentionality, I think, is really
Yes.
important. I always go back to, like, as you're thinking about buyer psychology, this idea that we understand not just the behaviors and the actions, but the motivations behind why people do what they do. Um, I think, as part of that, there's a long-term connection that's been able to form. Like, there's the difference between successful businesses from a revenue standpoint, I
Yes.
find, and businesses that have staying power, that have this
It's a great point.
long-term strength. And I think psychology is a key part of it, sometimes very intentional, sometimes by accident. But it sounds like you've done this very intentionally. And I'd love to just hear maybe what sparked that intentionality and what does it look like? Like, how did you begin this process of buyer psychology within your business?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something that now that we have a team and there is 6 of us, including myself, it is something that we go back to every single day. We have very strong brand pillars. So that's really like the first thing is setting up where our brand values are and what we're trying to do here. So we get requests from customers all the time. Can you make a coffee? Can you make a protein shake? Right? Like, and they're good, well intentional from our customer base. And I'm glad that people want to see us do all of these different things and enter these different categories. But for us, we are an on the go snack company. So we're never going to be like making a jar of nut butter and like handing it to you, right? Like, unless it can be like maybe a single serve packet one day, you never say
Yeah.
never. But like, we're an on the go snack company at our core. So everything we do is making sure that single serve for the customer to eat on the go, because that is where my story came from. But also, that's where the need is, right? Like, when people are home, and I do eat our protein bars at home, but if you have time to cook a meal, right, we want to encourage people to eat meals. But we know the reality is that we are all so busy and we're on the go, and snacking is a core part of our lifestyle. So that's the first thing, is we know what our product lines are going to be like and what our pipeline looks like. And the other thing is we drew the line. We do have customers that will ask, or buyers that will ask, like, oh, well, why don't you just make your, this bar exactly like this bar? And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me, right? That's not filling a need. So coming back to the white space, and I see this happen a lot lately, I would say over the past 5 years. I mean, we're a pandemic baby as a business, but the past 5 years, I've seen so many food and beverage companies enter the space, and 90% of them are the same, with just a lot of capital and a completely different label and packaging. And I love packaging. We've really, I'll hold up, I'm eating a bar right now. I'll hold up our packaging. It's really bright. It's really vibrant. This like superhero shadow really
Yeah.
helps people feel empowered. Like, we were super intentional with the packaging as well. But there's just so much out there that it's actually making consumers even more confused. So for us, we have to know our brand pillars. We have to know what types of products we're making, and we have to make sure that there's actually a white space. So I personally feel like the cracker space is actually a really good space, and that if I feel good enough to consume a cracker, I'm not going to make a cracker just for like a money grab. So for us, it's really filling a specific need for the consumer. So, and then the other piece was this brand value. So I think every founder going back to the table and being like, where am I drawing the line? Because this also is starting to happen where it's like, oh, well, my brand was vegan, and now I'm going to pivot because vegan's not cool anymore, right? Now seed oils and no seed oils and beef tallow are cool, right? Like, we have very specific criteria, and I use vegan as an example. We happen to be vegan, but we are not a vegan focused brand, right? So
Yeah.
it's not something that's part of our, like, the number one part of our hierarchy. But for us, we are lower sugar. That is always, even though like people are like, oh, cane sugar is great. At the end of the day, we are specifically for a customer who always wants less sugar. And you see this on Meta where all these brands that have like tons of sugar are launching, and there are tons of comments that are like, oh, but can you make a lower sugar version? I'm diabetic, I'm pre-diabetic, I'm on a GLP. So for us, we're always going to be lower sugar because it's something that's critical because of my parents' journey with cancer, and my grandfather had diabetes. We had so much pre-diabetes and heart disease in our family. At the end of the day, we wanted to make sure lower sugar, it doesn't have to be no added sugar in everything, but lower sugar, typically 80 to 90% less than what is
Right.
currently in the market. And then the cleanest ingredients. So that means no natural flavors, which is the hardest thing in the world to do in the food and beverage industry. It is probably the thing that keeps me up at night the most because we're doing it, because there are consumers and it's growing. You can see it on TikTok. You can see it on Instagram. Even if people don't exactly know what natural flavors are, they know there's something a little weird about them that's not transparent enough.
Unnatural.
Yes. So, and I am not, I consume things with natural flavors. There's really no choice. If I could make everything without natural flavors, I would. But the consumer palate, it's not necessarily, it's not needed for every single customer to have no natural flavors. But the masses are catching on to this and they're confused by it. And if there's an option that is still as accessible and affordable, they're going to pick it. So that is where we've seen that we're able to win, because no one's doing that, because it's really, really hard to do low sugar and no natural flavors. And it is why we iterate for months. We have a new product line dropping in 2026, and we have been working on it since November of 2024. So that's how long it takes to innovate, to get it right, and then even when it's in the market, if we're like, we get customer feedback, we're like, we're going to iterate again. So I think staying true to your core values and your brand, like we tell people, like it's going to be really hard for us to make like a s'mores flavored bar because s'mores like doesn't grow on trees, right? So it's hard to get that essence of what a s'mores bar would taste like or a birthday cake bar would taste like without using a natural flavor. And then when we explain it to consumers, they get it. So it's yeah, so there's definitely there's an education component to it, and we're not afraid of that. I think like a lot of brands are like, oh, well, consumers just must immediately get it. And I understand they have to, especially on the grocery store shelf. You have 3 seconds for sure. We've updated our packaging. Like I'm going to show again, like our packaging is super clear. You know, this is a protein plus bar. It's protein plus. It has no added sugar. Plus it's got fiber. So you have to be clear and concise. But there is an aspect, especially when you are digitally native, where you have other opportunities to really educate the consumer. And now you have this consumer that's not only buying once or buying on promo, they're also buying because they not only love the product, but now they know more about it. They know more about your company, and they know more about the intentionality behind it. So, and that's a lifetime, that's like customer lifetime value right there. So,
Yeah. And I think you're dealing with a customer, like in the protein space, for instance, they're getting overwhelmed with
yes,
lots of different options. And, you walk down the average retail aisle in protein bars in particular, and it's just
yeah,
like, holy cow,
it is
there
wild.
are so many options. But I love that you're owning an occasion, right? Like
Yes,
you're owning the on the go area. And then you've got these other differentiated components. Because what's really fascinating too, I actually just finished an entire sensory test on the protein bar industry. So this is
now I'm
very,
curious. I want to hear more.
very relevant in terms of what that looks like, right? Taste, texture, mouthfeel, aftertaste, all the things.
Yes,
And what's been fascinating as we've gone through all this research is really about the fact that very few people are buying a single brand.
yes, that is
So
true.
you look at this, and I mean, you even mentioned, right? Like, you had two brands that you were kind of going back
Yeah,
and
for
forth
sure.
on. And so that occasion element is such a critical space that I think lots of people, they show up and they're like, my brand's for everybody. My product is for every occasion. And why wouldn't 100 out of 100 people that walk down the aisle take this home
Yeah,
and have this experience? And so I
yeah,
love that you've recognized those opportunities to come and say, we play a really important, role in your life. And here's where we fit.
exactly. And we actually just started testing a Meta ad that literally says, "Do not buy these protein bars," with a picture of our protein bars. That unless you, I forgot the exact wording, but unless you are looking for the cleanest ingredients on the planet, something along those lines.
Yes.
And because we want, first and foremost, we want our target customer to fall in love with us. And that's what we've done really, really well. And our repeat customer rates over 50%. Customers are coming back. Of course, customers always love deals, and especially with how the
For sure.
economy is, people are always looking for extra promos and all the things. But our customer is ride or die BTR. And then the next layer of that is we know people are going to eat BTR and they're going to eat other bars on the market. And that's okay too, because that's where we start to chip a little bit away from share from other brands. We get to share the playing field more. And that's where our push into retail has been. Being digitally native, being really e-commerce focused for about 2.5 years of the business, it enabled us to start to build this ride or die base that when we go into retail, those customers immediately show up for us. And then we start acquiring other customers that are like, well, I eat this bar over here and I really like it, but it's super high in sugar. So I'm going to eat it a little, maybe I eat it twice a week, but then I'm going to eat B.T.R Nation every day, or I'm going to have B.T.R Nation twice a week too. And that's where we start to have like bars are just, it's such an interesting category. So I'd love to see your research because we go back and forth. We're also a different kind of bar. We're a nut butter bar. So we do have a different texture than most bars on the market that are very like wet or soft or sticky. Our bars are dense. They're more like a kind of like a cookie. So it's a different experience for customers that 9 out of 10 times people love. And then 1 out of 10 times people are like, wait, is this supposed to be how it is? It tastes really good, but it's like, it's more like cookie-like. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, that's actually how it's supposed to be how it is. And then that's just a little bit of education. It's been, it's a wild, wild category. And then we also play in the chocolate confectionery category as well. And we've got a really exciting launch coming there too. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
So as you think about all these experiences, I mean, right, direct to consumer e-commerce was the starting point. You get lots of data that way.
Yes.
Like there's no messing around in that space. Like it either works or it doesn't from that
Yes.
perspective. And then you've continued to expand and grow. As part of that, how do you currently stay close to customers? Because there are sometimes you can either get overwhelmed and you feel like you got to like shut things down, or, there's other methods, but what are you guys doing? 6-person team, all this information. How are you staying close?
Yeah. So we have a bunch of ways. The first way is I personally am on social, right? So very much I'm the face of the brand. I'm very entrenched in our social. I try not to get too caught up. So I'll usually set a timer for myself, but I'll spend usually 45 minutes to an hour every day on Instagram. Instagram is where our target customer lives. But we just opened our TikTok shop. We actually had like a TikTok ad kind of like blow up last night. And all of a sudden I'm seeing like hundreds of orders coming in. I'm like, well, what is going on? So they're there too. But I'm like, let me go in, let me start responding to these comments. And we do have a marketing coordinator that is on it, but like me being there and knowing social and being, I'm millennial. I did not grow up exactly with social media, but I'm close enough to it where I know Instagram inside and out. I know what's going to work and I know how to talk to customers there. And that's actually, I made some of our best friends there, our creators there. So that's one way is like, you got to be on social, right? I mean, as annoying as it is, and you got to try to put blinders on as much as possible. I tell founders this all the time, and they're like, well, how do I do this without being on social? And a marketing coordinator or an intern or someone can get that data and bring it back to you, but there's nothing like you seeing it right then and there.
Yes.
I personally respond to as many comments as possible on all of our ads as well. Sometimes it's overwhelming. We had one ad go viral. There were literally like 900 comments, and most good, but some also like, make something without nuts, right? And I'm like, oh, I know, I get it. It's on our list, but it's like, there's like 100 comments of like, please no nuts. And I'm like, okay, I'm on it. But it's good feedback, right? It's good feedback to bring to the R&D team. So that is living on social and being there, not 24/7, but enough time to really get it. We call our customers. So we call some of our best customers. So each person on the team, we have a 3-person marketing team. So each of us takes 2 or 3 customers to call, and we'll just get and some of them are great. Some of them are customers that have only ordered one time and we want to know why. So we do customer phone calls, and then we do 2 surveys per year, trying to get a feel for what else B.T.R Nation customers are buying. What do they want to, what do they love about B.T.R? What would they change about B.T.R? And for us, we always ask about taste, texture, and the number one reason consumers are buying the bar, because we know taste is king, but it is a nutrition bar. It has to be clean. So now we have data that shows that 90% of consumers are buying the bar because it's the lowest sugar, it's the cleanest ingredients. Then we have about 88% that are buying it solely on taste. So I'm like, this is really good because it's a bar and they do taste amazing, but it's hard. Every bar founder I've ever spoken to, taste, texture, macros. It's the only product in the store that is really like subject to everything. It has to do everything for consumers and then taste like a chocolate brownie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to do. So that's why listening
Expectations
to them.
are
Yes.
way
Yeah.
up here.
Wild for bars. Expectations are so, so high, and you really got to raise the bar, which is exciting to see that we're doing, and we send that to all of our customers specifically, as long as you purchased once. So that data is always amazing. We did one in May, and then we'll do one in November as well too. So yeah.
That's incredible. Well, I would love to ask one kind of final question, and that is,
Sure.
as you think about why people buy and, the success and growth that you've had, is there a single like tip, method, practice that you would recommend to anyone out there who's in the food and beverage business that they should be doing to understand why their customers buy and the buyer psychology behind their business?
Get on the phone. Get on the phone, get on a Zoom call. It's sometimes challenging because customers like hard to set schedules. So maybe if it's not even on the phone, like literally having a conversation in the DMs on Instagram with a customer. There's nothing like talking. We can make assumptions about customers, and I do still make assumptions all day long. And I'm like, well, what about this? What if we launch this type of flavor? What do we like? You can look at data. You can look at, we have Nielsen data. I mean, you can see the flavor profiles that are performing the best in competitive and competitors, but nothing's like actually talking to your customer about their experience and having them describe the experience to you. As is tough and from a time perspective because all founders and CEOs are short on time and short on money usually. So it's
Yes.
hard to do that. But so even if it's not a phone call, get out there, be in the field, be in the weeds, and then remove yourself from the weeds too. So you can kind of get back to that high level. I think being in the weeds is important to really get the product.
Yeah. I love that. And I just love the fact too, like, I think everybody in their mind always thinks for me to understand my customers, I have to go do really expensive research.
Yes. Yeah.
And as someone that does research for companies, I'm always just like, guys, just start. Like, to your
Just
point.
start. Start anywhere.
Yeah.
Stand in the aisles. This is one other thing I would recommend as well. Stand in the aisle in a grocery store where you are and just be be a creeper, but not a creeper. I mean, I demo a ton and I'm constantly sitting in the bar aisle watching people's behaviors. I see people pick up the product. Typically for bars, they're flipping it over and they are looking at the protein, the sugar, and I stop people and I'm like, even if we're not in that store, and I'm like, what prompted you to pick that up? And usually consumers are like, oh, well, it looked healthy, right? So, and now I see it actually has 15 grams of sugar. And I'm like, yeah, that one does actually have 15 grams of sugar, but it looked healthy, right? So front of pack and perception for consumers sometimes is very different than the back of pack. So in the bar set, you really got it. You got to hit all those marks. Whereas in another category, someone might just be like, oh, this cookie looks really good in my cart. And that's it. But,
There's
and
no
then
flip.
also, there's nothing there. But the other thing to keep in mind is like doing this in different channels as well. So we mainly live in the natural channel, but we also are in conventional. So we sell in Giant Foods, we sell in Rayleigh's, we sell in Lowe's. So we sit, and the aisles are not as, they might not be walked as much in the same way as they would be walked at like a Whole Foods or Sprouts,
Yeah.
but stand there and talk to customers and see their buying patterns. There's nothing like it. And then just being like, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I actually own a food company and I'm just really curious. Could you give me like, 60 seconds of your day so I can ask you a couple questions? And that goes so far.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love it. The one thing I'll add, because I have been that like lurker in the aisle doing research, is have a shopping cart.
That's a good one. I'm going to add that. Sometimes I'm just there with like a backpack and they're like, who is this person in my
Yeah.
face? So, and I'm like, wait, no, I'm the owner of this brand. And they're like, oh, the packaging is so pretty. That's usually, that's the first response. Packaging's so pretty. Let me look at it. So but yes, have a shopping cart is a good one. So it looks, you are, and you're probably already doing your shopping anyway. So this is a great time to like multitask.
Exactly. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us
Of course.
today, for sharing your experience. Congratulations on all the success. I'm looking forward to the new launches that you have
Thank you.
and to keep following your journey. Oh,
Awesome. Thank you so
thank
much
you
for
so much.
having me, Seth. This was so much fun.
Yep. Thank you.